voice. Let's sing this together. Every fear overtaken, and every wall comes crashing down. I am free in your presence, oh, hey. You've lifted my burdens, you surround me with your grace, full of hope in your presence, oh, yes, come on, sing. And I can't stop singing about your love. I can't stop singing about your love. My heart is overcome. We sing, oh, and I can't stop singing about your love. For everything that you've done, my heart is overcome. We sing, oh, come on, I see the kingdom of heaven, and peace in dark within this light. We're alive in your presence, oh. You have won our salvation. At the cross, one sacrifice, so secure in your presence, oh. And come on, and I can't stop singing about your love. I can't stop singing about your love. My heart is overcome. We sing, oh, and I can't stop singing about your love. For everything that you've done, my heart is overcome. We sing, oh, worship you now, Jesus. We praise you forever. Come on, let's give God glory today. Let's sing this together. I praise you forever, every voice. Yeah, I praise you forever. Your love goes on and on. Yeah, I sing to you, Jesus. You are, 'cause you are my, what we sing. Yeah, I praise you forever. Your love goes on and on. Yeah, sing to you, Jesus. You are, 'cause you are my first love. Hey! Sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. Sing hallelujah. And I can't stop singing about your love. Can't stop singing about your love. My heart is overcome. We sing, oh, and I can't stop singing about your love. For everything that you've done, my heart is overcome. You are, 'cause you are my, come on. And sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. Sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. We sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. Every voice, sing hallelujah. You are my first love. We declare, sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. Sing hallelujah, 'cause you are my first love. Jesus. Hey, come on, let's sing this together. I search the world. Yeah, I search the world. It couldn't fill me. Immense empty praise, treasures that fade, never enough. Then you came along. Then you came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Come on, every voice in this place, we declare this. Yo, there's nothing, come on, better than you, Lord. There's nothing, you sing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Oh, I know it's true. Oh, Jesus, we sing that I'm not afraid. Come on. To show you my weakness and my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. Because the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Oh, if there's not a place, your mercy and grace won't find me again. We sing, oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Come on. Sing, nothing is better than you. We know it's true. No, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing. Nothing is better. Jesus. Hey, come on, every voice, let's declare this. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn mourning to day. Come on. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. Believe it. 'Cause you're the only one who can. You're turning grace. You turn grace into God. You turn bones into arms. You turn seas into highways. 'Cause you're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. When we sing, oh, there's nothing, you sing better. Oh, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. There's nothing, no, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing, nothing is better than you. Turning grace, you turn grace into God. Come on. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You turn grace into God. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. We declare, you're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Hey, come on, let's give us some praise in this place today. Come on.
All right, all right. How's everyone doing this morning? Welcome to church. Go ahead and take a seat. How many loving that fall feeling air out there right now, huh? Come on, everybody. Welcome to church. My name is CJ. I'm one of the pastors here. We're so grateful you're with us today. If you happen to be with us for the very first time, District.Church, can we welcome our friends with us here this morning? Yeah. You're in for a treat. This is an incredible weekend with an incredible opportunity for impact, and you're going to see more about that here in a few minutes. But if you are new, I just want to welcome you and give you an opportunity to connect with us and us with you. We put the ball in your court. You can do it whenever you're cozy and comfy, ready to do it. But all you got to do is text the words "new to district." Grab your cell phone, "new to district," one word to 97,000. And we give you our hassle-free guarantee, which means we don't want to make it weird for you or for us. We just simply want to send you a letter this upcoming week, thanking you for being with us, and then providing you with some next steps here at District Church. A bunch of events coming up that will connect you to opportunities for community and whatnot. And so we just love to do that for you to get you plugged in here, around here. And also, if you are new with us as you leave today, swing by the shipping containers. We got a free gift we'd love to give you. In fact, if there's a line, just cut in line, say, "I'm new here." That's all you got to say. And then they're going to hook you up with a free gift and just something to remember us by. And again, thank you for being with us this morning. You're in for a treat. Like I said, we got one child with us this weekend. We have a huge opportunity as a church to make a huge difference in young kids' lives in the Philippines, actually. I'm really excited to share about that here in a few minutes. But the other thing I want to invite you to is if you're kind of new to District Church, you're like, hey, I want to know kind of more, kind of behind the curtain a little bit. We host a thing called Pathways. And it's something I'm actually hosting live after the third service on October 23rd. And it's a 2-week thing. We're going to buy you lunch. And if you're like, hey, I'm new, I want to figure out what it looks like to be part of the family here, I'd love to invite you to come out and hang with us. You get to meet a bunch of the pastors and the team. And we'd love to just get to know you some more, too. And again, it just gives you an opportunity to know who we are and what we're about and what really kind of drives us, what our passion is. And so we want to invite you to be a part of that. You can go to District.Church. That's our website. And just sign up for that through there. I'm going to invite you to stand this morning. We're going to keep it short because we want to get to one child. This can be a great weekend. But we're going to continue in worship. And so I just want to invite you to really kind of take a minute now. You know, you're kind of settled in. The band's done a great job opening up. Love you guys so much. Seriously, can we just love on them a little bit? Love it. Yeah, it's great. But I know this about them, that they're not really concerned if you watching them. They actually want to worship with you, right? Am I right? I'm just making sure, because if not, we need to chat. But anyway, no, like we want to worship Jesus together. And here's what I know about a room like this is like we have 3 services on a Sunday, and every one of us are in a different season in our journey. And some of us have maybe journeyed away, and you're kind of making your way back. Some of us are brand new to the thing. I've been both in my life, and so I just want to invite you, whatever stage of the journey you're in, is that Jesus wants to receive you as you are, okay? So you don't have to have your life all together. You don't have to be a perfect anybody. Anything that you might have a perspective on, just put it to the side and go, okay, Jesus, I know you want to meet me where I'm at, how I am. And as we do that this morning, just bring your heart to the table. I would just say open your heart to Him, open your life to Him, and I promise He will meet you right where you're at. And I love the idea that He invites us to the table, right? And He says, come and hang with me. The only thing I want to remind you about this morning is that you're not the guest of honor, and I'm not the guest of honor. Jesus is the guest of honor. And so as we worship Him this morning, let's worship Him as the guest of honor in our worship and in our hearts this morning. So let's pray together as we continue to worship. Jesus, we love You. Thank You for the opportunity we have to gather together as Your sons and daughters from all different walks of life, all different religious upbringings, all different stories. What a beautiful example of what Your church looks like. And I'm so grateful to hang out with my family this morning, and we get to worship You together. And Jesus, we just put You on display in our hearts. We set the distractions to the side, and we focus solely and wholly on You. You're the King of our lives, King of our hearts, and we give You our attention and our worship now. In Jesus' name, everybody said, amen. Let's worship together.
Shadow where I, the
You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. We sing. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. We sing. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You're never gonna let, you're never gonna let me down. You are good. You're good. You are good. You're good. You are good. You're Amen. Hey, before you're seated, turn to someone next to you, give them a high five. Let them know you're glad they're in church this morning.
Hey everyone, my name's Allie. Welcome to District and thanks so much for being here with us this weekend. We're switching things up again this month, so take note that first Wednesday will actually be the third Wednesday in October. We're especially looking forward to this night because we'll be worshiping together outdoors for the first time in our brand new amphitheater. Our crew has been hard at work building this out and we're really excited to have an outdoor option for worship and community events. We'll still be serving dinner for you and your family starting at 5:30, and then we'll have an evening of worship and communion at 7 p.m. So come hang out with us. It really is a great time in the middle of your week to reset and be encouraged with your church family. All ages are welcome, and we'll have childcare for infants through 4th grade available 15 minutes prior to the start of service. We want you to mark your calendars for Saturday, October 29th for our 6th annual Trunk or Treat. It's going to be a great night and a super fun way to let the community know that we love them and we're here to serve them. On top of plenty of candy, we'll have inflatables, carnival rides, games, and a ton of other stuff for you and your family to enjoy. The most fun way to be a part of this night is to deck out your own trunk and hand out candy to our trunk-or-treaters. If you want to serve in that way, we'd love for you to sign up as soon as you can. It'd really help us plan so we can make the night as memorable as possible. If you want to help us by decking out your trunk or help in any other way, just go to District.Church and click on the Trunk or Treat banner. Thanks so much for being with us today. Whether you're a spiritual seeker who's just starting to ask questions about God, or a committed Christian who wants to sink the roots of your faith even deeper, there's a place for you at District. We're in a really exciting season as a church, and there's no better time than right now to take that next step on your spiritual journey. Let us know if we can help you in any way while you're here, and be sure to connect with us at District.Church and on social media to stay up to date with everything happening at District. We hope you enjoy the rest of the service.
All right, everybody. Well, you're in for a treat this morning. I got a buddy of mine from Vancouver, Washington here, who's with an organization called One Child, and I'm very excited to launch this partnership with them as a church. If you're not familiar with child sponsorship, some of you may have already done that with other organizations, and that's awesome. I think it's the heart of Jesus. But if not, today is going to be a great day for you because you're going to see what it is all about. And this organization has just captured our attention, our hearts. I think they're at the forefront of doing some incredible things in this avenue. And not only that, James, who is here to speak this morning, is an incredible guy. He's got the heart of Jesus, and he also looks like the bad guy from Home Alone. And so now that I've introduced him in that way, District.Church, will you please welcome James Grout to the stage?
You can see it, can't you? I was telling someone earlier, I was at a hockey game in Chicago one time, and there was someone I'm walking to my seat, and I hear someone from the upper balcony just yelling out, "Marv!" And my name's James, so I didn't look. But it just kept yelling, "Marv!" And pretty soon everybody turns around like, who is yelling Marv? And it was one of my students from my youth group, and he's pointing at me. And then everyone turned and looked at me, and they're like, is that Marv? Could be Marv. So I signed autographs for an hour and a half. So thanks for the introduction, TJ, who's already gone. But thank you. So I really feel privileged to be here. I'm very excited about what we're doing here today. And I'm going to actually tell you about myself, not just because you don't know who I am, but partly as a way to introduce what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. So I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Western Canada. Calgary is my home. And I'm an American by birth, but I'm pretty Canadian by culture just because I was there for most of my formative years. And so I'm super nice. And and I like hockey, but I don't play hockey because I was 7 years old when we moved there. And they were like, sorry, too late. You can't start now. So, but I grew up there. And at 18 years of age, my youth pastor said to me, "Hey, James, I'm teaching the college Bible study for 4 weeks. Would you teach the high school Bible study for me for 4 weeks? Like a Wednesday night Bible study with about 100 high school kids." I was 18. I had just graduated from high school. So these were pretty much my peers. And he asked me to do it. And I liked him, and I wanted him to like me. So I said yes. And then on my drive home, I thought to myself, what have I done? I've just agreed to teach the Bible to teenagers for 4 weeks. I haven't looked at my Bible in probably 4 years. So I'm not going to be a great Bible teacher. And teenagers, I don't know if you know this, they can sniff out a fake. Like they know when someone's trying to get something by on them. So I worked really hard over the next few weeks trying to prepare for that thing. I wanted that Bible study to be the best Bible study that had ever happened in the history of mankind. It was not. I actually still have the notes from it. It wasn't the best, it wasn't even the best theology. I was just like, didn't know what I was doing, just trying it out. But I'll tell you what, that first night that I was speaking, I was about 20 minutes into it, and I heard the voice of the Spirit of God. And it had happened to me one other time before that. And so I kind of recognized this, this sort of internal voice that I heard. And the voice said, "I created you this way for a reason." And over the next 4 weeks, as I was teaching that Bible study, the Bible study didn't get any better, but that voice got louder. It just kept saying, "I created you this way for a reason." And so when I was all done, I went to my youth pastor. I said, "I think God's talking to me." And he said, I thought he was going to say, "That's weird, shut up," or something. I didn't know what he was going to say. He said, "That's great. What's God saying to you?" And I said, "Okay, I'm not positive, but I think God's saying, I want you to teach the Bible to teenagers." And he said, "That's good, you should do that." I was like, yeah, whatever. Is that a job? Like, can I get paid for that? Like, how am I going to make money if I'm teaching the Bible to teenagers? And he said, "James, that's what I do." I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." I was like, "Wait, you get paid?" He's like, "Yeah, I have a retirement fund and everything. It's great." So I didn't know what that calling was, what that voice was, but that was God's call on my life towards youth ministry. And so I became a youth pastor. I went to Bible college so that I would be a better Bible teacher. And I became a youth pastor in Chicago, suburbs of Chicago, Wheaton, Illinois, and I was there for 20 years as a youth pastor at that local church. And I'll just tell you right now, I loved it. I loved everything about youth ministry, except for the teenagers and their parents. Everything else about youth ministry was great. No, that's just a joke, I say. So, no, I really do have a heart for teenagers. And in fact, God has given me what I call a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's like a gift that he gave me that is beautiful and horrific, because what he's given me is empathy for teenagers. And I don't know how you define empathy, but I distinguish empathy from sympathy in this way, and this might not be what these words actually mean, but here's how I do it. Sympathy is when you feel bad for somebody. Empathy is when you feel what someone feels. And to be a person who feels what teenagers feel is not an easy gift to carry. It feels like a burden sometimes. There would be times at the end of a night where I would go home just wrecked, and nothing had happened to me. Like nothing bad had happened to me. It was just that I feel what they feel. And I still have it. Like that has not been taken away from me. And I told God, I will do whatever you want me to do with teenagers as long as you want me to do it, if you continue to give me that thing. But if you ever take it away from me, then I probably will get out of it, because it's exhausting in some ways. But I love and care about teenagers so much. And so that's why after about 15 years of being at that church and being in that role, I was pretty discouraged when reports started to come out that surveys were being done on the religious lives of teenagers in America. And one of the findings was that 50% of teenagers who were youth group kids, came to church, were participating, were a part of the youth group, were involved. 50% of them, when they got to college age, were walking away from the church. And that statistic was shocking at that time. It's probably a little bit higher than 50% now. But that's where it was at that time, and no one knew. No one had ever really done that kind of a study before, so no one knew that was true. And then everyone started going, who do we point fingers at? Who should we blame for 50% of church kids who decide not to be a part of the church anymore once they get into college? And they pointed the finger at youth ministry. Not everybody, but some people did. And as a youth pastor, I was offended and afraid that they might be right. I was afraid that they might be right, and maybe something we're doing is creating this scenario. And if that was true, I remember telling God, if that's true, I want out of youth ministry. Like if what I'm doing is causing young people to actually leave the church, 1 out of 2 leaves the church, I don't want to be a part of that. Like I want to figure out how to either do this right or I don't want to do it anymore. And as I said, I loved youth ministry. I had no intention of quitting. So I actually went to the Bible. I was trying to figure out, is there a biblical mandate for why youth ministry exists? Is there anything in the Bible that would support the existence of this thing in churches called youth ministry? And if not, maybe that's the answer. Maybe we need to find another way to do what we do. So I went looking through the scriptures, and I found a lot of different verses that I thought applied to this, and was just kind of doing deep dive studying into those things. And I came across this one passage in the book of Deuteronomy, and it was familiar to me. I'd not only read it many times before, I had actually preached it before. And in fact, I would say I had kind of mispreached it. And I think I'd heard other people mispreach it as well. But it had an impact when I read it this time. I read it differently this time. And so I'm going to read that passage for you, but before I do, I want to give you the context, because it really matters here. So Moses is writing these words. The book of Deuteronomy was written by Moses. Moses is writing these words to the nation of Israel because he's not going into the promised land with them. He'd been leading them. He led them out of Egypt, and he'd been leading them through the wilderness. But now, at the end of it, because of some disobedience, God has said to him, you're not going in. You're not going to be the leader who takes them into the promised land. I'm raising up another leader named Joshua who's going to do that. And so Moses, these are his last words. There's a lot of them. It's not like he just said 2 words and died. He knew he had time, and these are the last things he's going to tell the people that he's been leading for an entire generation. And last words are important. So he spent time and poured a lot into this. And I'm just going to give you sort of an overview of what he's saying in this section of scripture, what he's saying in this particular book of the Bible. He's saying, don't forget. Over and over, he says, don't forget. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget where you came from. Don't forget that you were slaves in Egypt and you are now free people. Don't forget that you wandered in the wilderness and you're about to enter into a homeland that is flowing with milk and honey. and you did nothing to deserve it. You're just getting a promise of God fulfilled for you. Don't forget that. Don't forget that when you were in the wilderness, you were hungry, and God every morning laid out food on the ground for you to eat. And when you whined about that because you got tired of it, God had a flock of birds dive bomb your camp so that you could also have meat. And when you were thirsty in the desert and there was no water around, God brought water out of a rock a couple of different times. Do not forget who you are. You are the people of God. You are his chosen ones, and he has rescued you, and he has sustained you, and he is leading you into the promised land. Don't forget. There's one passage, there's one section where he says, kind of a rhetorical question, he said, what other nation has stood next to a mountain that was on fire and heard the voice of God come out of the mountain and give you commands and lived to tell about it? And it's a rhetorical question because no other nation had experienced that. No other nation knew this God. And it's at that point in this book that this section comes up. And I'll just tell you right now, it's a Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9. This is known generally in the Hebrew world. This little passage of Scripture is known as the Shema. And Shema is a Hebrew word, and it means hear, like listen with your ears. It's the first word in verse 4 of Deuteronomy 6, is the word hear. And I'm going to read this through for you so that you can understand a little bit more about it. But I want you to listen to some of Moses' final words to the entire nation of Israel. He says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands. Bind them on your foreheads and write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates." Do you think that Moses wanted them to remember? That's crazy. He's literally telling them, I want you to take these things that I'm telling you, and I want you to put them on your wrist, and I want you to wear them on your head, and I want them on the door frames of your houses. And you might think, well, that's figurative. He doesn't mean that. No, whether he meant it figuratively or literally, I don't know, but they took it literally. If you actually know anybody who's a devout Jewish person today and you went to their home, you might see on the outside frame of their door, you might see a little box. And if you were to open that box and reach inside, there'd be paper. And if you pulled that paper out and unrolled it, it might be written in Hebrew, but it would be Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 to 9, the Shema. When Jesus was critical of religious leaders in the New Testament, when he was walking around criticizing them, one of the things he accused them of was being how proud they were of how wide their phylacteries were. That's weird. He's scolding them for having wide phylacteries. What's a phylactery? A phylactery is something that you wear on your head. And in that is a leather pouch. And if you open that leather pouch and you pulled out the paper that's inside, you'd find the Shema. And Jesus wasn't being critical of them for obeying Moses. He was being critical of them because they would wear really, really big phylacteries on their head so that people could see how spiritual they were from a distance. So this is very literal, that they would wear it on their wrists and on their heads and put it on the door frames of their houses. This is how seriously they took Moses' final words. So as I'm looking at this passage, I remembered that I had preached this passage. And as I said previously, I think I had mispreached it a little bit, and I'd heard other people mispreach it. Because here's how I was preaching it. This is a passage about how parents pass faith onto their children. And that's not untrue, but it's not the complete truth. It's not the whole truth of this passage. Because as I was reading at that particular time, I read this very differently. Because it does not begin with, "Hear, O parents." It begins with, "Hear, O Israel." It sounds like it's for parents because it says, impress these things on your children, talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, when you get up, tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. It sounds like it's for parents. This is how you pass faith on to your children. But the message isn't to parents alone. The message is to the entire community of faith, to the entire nation of Israel. This is your responsibility to make sure that they know, to make sure that they don't forget, to remind them of who they are, where they came from, who their God is, how he's delivered them, how he has sustained them, and how he's fulfilling his promises. This is the responsibility of the whole community of faith. And when I read that, I remember thinking, man, I have put an undue burden upon parents. Now, don't get me wrong, parents, you are the primary influencer of your children's faith journey, for better or for worse. You don't really have a choice in that. You will shape them. The way you live, the way you believe, the way your faith is impressed upon them, it will shape them, I guarantee you. But it's not meant to be done alone. You're not supposed to be on an island somewhere making sure that you don't do anything wrong and that your kids learn how to live out their faith because you did it all perfectly. This is actually, I believe, this is an Old Testament example, but I believe it's a New Testament principle. I believe that this is the job of the church. So I started to think differently about youth ministry. I was like, man, we were doing some things that we should maybe do differently. Like a lot of what we do is we were having teenagers, kind of like separated from the body of the church. It was just like just high school group and just a middle school group and just a sixth grade group and even our children's ministry and the young adults. It was like all kind of sectioned off. And we weren't doing anything that was what I would call intergenerationally. So I used to define youth ministry this way. I think something like youth ministry is about disciples making disciples who make disciples. It's a multiplying kind of thing. But here's how I define it now. Youth ministry should exist to be a catalyst in the passing of faith from one generation to the next. And the rough definition of a catalyst is something that makes two things that are not connected, make them work together. So here's a generation, an older generation that has lived faith during their lives. Here's a younger generation that's trying to figure out how to live faith, and maybe youth ministry and children's ministries and some of our other ministries can be a catalyst to make sure that that happens. And I started to think differently about what we did. I want to tell you that if you're a student, if you're a high school student, junior high student, middle school child in this room, I just want to tell you that a lot of times guys like me who get up and speak on a Sunday morning in a church ignore you. There's nothing in a message for you. I've done this. And I was thinking about that, just really practically speaking. I was like, there isn't a public speaker in the world who would get away with ignoring 30 to 40% of their audience every time they talked. And so I've been encouraging people like me and other pastors, like, don't forget that these people are in the room. And so I want to tell you, if you're a teenager here today, or if you're a child here today, I just want to tell you something. I want you to listen to me. This is your place, and these are your people. Because there's going to come a day where you're going to wonder, is that my place? Are those my people? Do I belong? Do I matter there? Would they miss me if I were gone? That's what was happening when 50% of young people were walking away from the church. And I want you to understand that this place, these people, they are for you. And they are not perfect and they will not live their faith out perfectly, but that's okay. They're going to actually show you how to live faith, even when it's not perfect, even when it's not pretty, even when it's maybe even ugly. They're going to live that with you. And adults in the room, I just want to tell you, we used to talk about ratios. We had these safety ratios in youth ministry. For every 7 kids, you needed 1 caring adult, just for safety reasons and other reasons. My friend said we should just flip that whole equation upside down. For every child or every teenager in our youth ministry, we need 5 caring adults. And that doesn't mean 5 volunteers in the youth ministry. It means 5 adults in the church faith community who know that child by name, know what they're doing in school. They know something about them. They can pray for them. They can encourage them. They can support those parents, non-family members who actually care about that child. As parents, have you ever asked your friends to pray specifically for one of your children on a certain day? Like maybe you have a son who plays football on Fridays and you're like, I could use a little extra prayer for my son on Friday afternoon. Would you pray for my son every Friday afternoon? Invite people into the journey of faith that your children are on, because I believe it looks different than we thought it looked. Let me give you a picture of it from the New Testament. Have you guys ever considered what horrible parents Jesus had? You ever thought about that? Oh, good, that's a better laugh than the first service. Like, they were so quiet. I was like, oh man, they're like, I thought everybody was like, he really isn't a very good Bible teacher. Like, he's not very appropriate. So I'll give you biblical evidence. I should just say, I said this once another time in another place, and a gentleman came to me afterwards and he said, young man, Mary and Joseph were excellent parents. But the way they raised Jesus was they did an amazing job, and he never would have been the man that he was if it wasn't for them. And I stopped him and I said, sir, I'm sorry. I said, I was actually just joking. It was just meant to be a joke. And he's like, oh, well, then I'm sorry that I don't understand your sense of humor. So I was like, all right, is that an apology? It sounds like an accusation. So anyway, it is a joke. It is a joke. But listen, I have some evidence. Like, it's a joke, but I have some evidence. Luke chapter 2, verse 41, every year his parents, Jesus' parents, went to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. Now this is just this is context here as well. To tie this into what I'm talking about, the feast of Passover is one of those events that Moses said, don't forget. Don't forget that when we were in Egypt, the final plague was the plague where all the Egyptians' firstborn male children were killed by the angel of death. But all of the Israelites who put lamb's blood on the doorframes of their houses, the angel of death passed over. So now they're celebrating the memory. Hundreds of years later, Jesus and his parents are celebrating the memory of that event, that the angel of death passed over and God rescued them from slavery. All right, so that's just a little context for this little thing. Every year, they've been doing it for hundreds of years. And here's an example of a good Jewish family. They're going to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. When he was 12 years old, Jesus was 12, they went up to the feast according to the custom. After the feast was over, while his parents were returning home from the biggest city they'd ever visited, while they were leaving that big city, the boy Jesus, 12-year-old Jesus, stayed behind in Jerusalem, and they, his parents, Mary and Joseph, were unaware of it. I'm making a case, aren't I? Like, you're like, okay, I wasn't so sure about this. It gets worse. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. An entire day they walked away from their 12-year-old. Then, after a day, they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem. One day out, one day back. We're up to 2 days that they've been without their 12-year-old. The next verse is shocking. After 3 days, so I don't know if that's 3 additional days or just 1 extra day, but after 3 days, so it's somewhere between 3 and 5 days they've been without their 12-year-old. After 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. How in the world did they walk away from their 12-year-old? How did that happen? Well, it says they thought he was with them. And it doesn't mean they thought he was with them. It means they thought he was with them. Jesus was being raised in a community where Mary and Joseph were not the only voices who spoke into his life. He was being raised in a community where they were not the only ones who talked to him about what to believe. Jesus became in part who he was because of the community that was surrounding him, who Mary and Joseph trusted enough that they could walk away from their 12. I just want to say the community dropped the ball. They didn't do their job this particular time, but that doesn't change the fact that that community existed around Jesus. There's an Old Testament example here, there's a New Testament example here, but I think this is a today example as well. I believe that faith for the next generation is going to be passed on as a community. And I believe parents need help. I'm a single dad. And as a single dad, I raised 2 teenage daughters pretty much by myself. And I understand we need help. We can't do that alone. We're not intended to. I believe that it's sort of our culture that we do everything we're all independent. But that's not very biblical, and it's certainly not very Hebrew in nature. This is meant to be a communal activity. So I believe this is a calling for this church, for every church, for the church. It's a calling to do it differently, to engage differently as a whole community, passing on faith to the next generation. So I want to, in order to be able to finish what I have to say, I want to tell you how I sort of transitioned from youth ministry. I was a youth pastor for 20 years, and then for a couple of years I was the national youth director for our denomination that I was a part of. And then when my time there in that office was done, I was looking for a job. I was doing a startup company, but I was looking for a job, and I found this organization called One Child. And I'd never heard of them, but the job that they had looked very interesting to me, and so I really wanted the job. So I decided in the interview to not tell them that I don't really like children. And I mean, I like children. I have children. They're lovely. But I'm a youth guy, right? Like, I like teenagers. Like, if you told me I had to be a children's pastor, I'd be like, I don't think so. I don't think you want me in that role. But if you told me I got to be a youth pastor, I'd be like, perfect. I love that. So I have this passion for youth ministry, not so much for kids ministry, and I got the job because I didn't bring it up. But honestly, the truth is, I had a bit of a personal crisis. I was like, I don't want to do a job just because I need a job. Like, that's not my goal here. I want to do something that I'm passionate about, and I just don't know if I have the passion for children's ministry like I do for youth ministry. So I went on my very first trip with One Child, took a group of pastors to the Dominican Republic so they could see what we do there, learn about our model program and how we do it. And we went into a slum, and I'll just tell you right now, it's the worst slum I've ever been in. I've been in some really horrible, horrible places. This wasn't the poorest slum I've ever been in. It's just the slum where I was the most afraid that I've ever been. And I've been back there 2 more times since, and both times I felt this sense of fear and this sense of just a weight and a darkness. The name of the city, if this will help you understand how I felt, the name of the city translated into English is "Get Out If You Can." I was like, all right. I felt that as soon as I got in. I'd like to get out if I can. Can I get out? No? All right. Or it could also be translated "No Way Out." And as we're walking through the streets, it was a bright, sunny day, but I didn't feel the sunshine. I didn't feel the brightness of that day. I just looked around and I saw the drugs. I saw the prostitution. I saw the gang symbols. I saw all the stuff that was going on in this community, and I felt the weight of it. And then I saw children playing in the streets. It's not safe for children to play in the streets in this neighborhood, but there they are. That's their life. This is the life that they've been given. And as we're walking through the neighborhood, we were on our way to a home. We were going to visit one of the children who was from our program, the One Child Development Program that was in that neighborhood, in that community called Get Out If You Can. And as we're walking through, I was kind of overwhelmed. I wasn't telling anybody what I was feeling, but I was feeling it. Like, the weight of that place was on me. And as we stepped into this tiny little 2-room home, a home in air quotes, it wasn't really much of a home. It was a very small little apartment for this little girl and her parents to live in. As we stepped out of the street and down a step into their little home, something changed radically. Like, there was a sense of peace in that place, and I felt it immediately. There was a sense of hope in that place, and it was palpable. And this girl, who at this time, she'd been in the program for a while, she was probably 14, 15 years old, she came out to meet us. And, it's all these, like, giant youth pastor guys and, like, cramming into her little room. And she comes out and she greets us and she introduces us to her parents. And she goes into her room and comes out with letters that her sponsor had written her because she wanted to tell us the story of the relationship with her sponsor and all of this stuff. And then she smiled the whole time. And she had these, like, gleaming, shiny new braces on her teeth that One Child had helped her get. And one of the pastors asked a question that it sometimes shouldn't be asked when you're talking to a child who grew up in extreme poverty, which is, so what are your dreams? What do you want to be? And sometimes they'll just stare at you blankly like, what do you mean, what do I want to be? Like, I'm trying to beg for food. I don't have any dreams about tomorrow. But this little girl, without a hesitation, she said, I want to be a dentist. Just like that. And I thought, man, that's not even a wish for her. Like, that's what she's going to do. That's her plan, is to be a dentist. And maybe help other kids like her get shiny new braces like the ones she had. When I heard that, I stepped back out the door, and it was still the same place out there. The war zone was still going on outside of that little apartment. But God did something in my heart, and I sealed this in my heart that day. I said to him, God, if our children and child development programs produce that kind of teenager, one who has confidence and hope and sees beyond this horrible community that she lives in, she sees something that is bigger than just the circumstances surrounding her. If that's what our programs produce, I can advocate for children all day, every day, for the rest of my life. And that's what I've been doing for the last 6 years. And that's actually what we're doing here today. We have an opportunity to join in with the community that surrounds the children that we work with around the world. I said all my illustrations and this whole message has been about youth ministry in North America. It's not different elsewhere. Children, young people need a community. They need people of faith around them to live out their lives so they can see it and have hope that that can be their life as well. I want you to watch this video, and I encourage you to watch for the adults in the video who come alongside our children around the world. Watch this.
My dreams start when I wake up. I dream before I become maybe a doctor or a teacher, or I could have my own business.
But it's more than that too. I dream of life without the hard things that surround me.
I dream of a full life with more happy moments. I am on a journey, and sometimes it's scary, which means I have to be brave.
But I am not alone. This journey is surrounded by champions helping me, listening to me and believing in me.
This is a journey with laughs,
A journey with lots of work.
a journey with care,
A journey with love.
A journey that is hard but no longer hopeless.
a journey that starts with someone far away,
Someone who wants me to thrive.
Someone who believes in me and everything I will become.
someone like you.
Well, can we just start this morning by thanking James for sharing his heart this morning with us? Yeah,
you.
so good. And as James said, we're going to have opportunity to take a next step with One Child, and we are excited to do that as a church. And as you know, you've heard a lot of the impact that One Child does make, but you know, as you go to sponsor Kids Day, can you just tell us what direct kind of impact does that sponsorship have in a kid's life?
Yeah, well, I always thought I knew what child sponsorship was before I went to One Child because I'd sponsored children before. But I didn't have a very complete picture. I thought they just got some clothes and some help and whatever. It's really a program. So when you think of sponsorship, think of development, or think of even the word discipleship. It's a program that brings someone along, and from where they are to where they hope to be. And so we have people all over the world that are helping kids in areas like tutoring for school with their education, helping them with nutrition, making sure that they have a good meal, and even teaching their parents how to cook nutritious meals at home, making sure they have help with health screening and all the immunizations that they need, making sure that they have a safe place for a child to just play and be a child. Children deserve to be children, and there's an opportunity for them to, even in those really dangerous communities where some of them live, to have a safe place. And then the other thing that is really important is that we connect, all of our Hope Centers are connected to a local gospel-believing, gospel-teaching church. So the volunteers who work with these, our child champions, who work with these kids, are the ones who are demonstrating the love of God and teaching them about the God who created them, who has a plan for them, who wants to live in their lives and live with them. So all of that comes from $39 a month for sponsoring a child. And that program is for that child until they graduate from high school, if they want to stay in it that long.
Awesome. So like this morning, I grabbed my kids. We're here early. I have a 6- and an 8-year-old. I was like, hey, kids, come over here. And I asked them, I said, I want you to pick a kid that you're gonna be with until they're 18 years old. You're gonna write them letters. You're gonna develop a relationship, and you're gonna go meet these guys someday. And so my daughter was next to me, Harper, and she found one of the little girls. Her name was Princess, and she's like, "That's my girl." Like, and then my son was like, "I want to get Prince." I was telling James, I'm like, is this like because there's like a couple Princes. He's like, that's a total common name.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we did. We got Princess and Prince right here. And, I was thinking about it this morning, and I asked first service, I'm like, how many of you spent like $40 on something stupid like this week maybe? No, okay, just me. That's cool. Thanks for making me feel like that. I spent $40 on some stupid stuff this week. I can promise you, because I went to Starbucks, which is terrible coffee. I don't support it. But anyway, wow. So I say all that to go like, man, I just want you to really prayerfully consider what I don't want you to do is to go out there just to check a box. But if you're like, hey, I want to build a relationship with these kids, I'm telling you, it can change a life, and that's the impact that we can make today. And I just want you to talk about that partnership, because it's not just today. What I don't want for us to do is be like, okay, we just went and did this today, and then it's done.
Yeah.
We specifically picked one child, and we met with all sorts of organizations this year to figure out who is this partnership, who's this going to be with, and so talk to us about what does partnership look like with you guys.
Yeah, so partnership is really important to us because we believe in long-term development. And the more we're engaged together as partners, the more we'll be able to see that long-term development happen. So, for example, it's a sponsor to a child. It's a one-to-one relationship. That one sponsor and that one child, or that one family and that one child. That's a real relationship. But that's not all it is. It's also a community to a community. So all the children that we have available for sponsorship today, here in person and online, they all come from the same kind of cluster of hope centers that are all in the same community. So you as a community are actually investing in another community. And here's one of the things I love about it. You have 3 services on Sunday. Maybe someday you'll have 4 or 5, 9. I don't know how many.
I hope not.
So we'll keep it at 3. We'll just blow the roof off this place. But that means there's people in this community who you aren't necessarily connected to. You might not know, but it's pretty cool to know that you together with those who you haven't even met are investing in another community around the world. So it's sponsor to a child, it's a community to a community, it's going to be a pastor to a pastor, because everywhere we work with local churches, and then you have a chance to actually go and meet your child as well. So we're planning a trip already for April of 2023 to go to the Philippines and meet one of these children.
Yeah, which I love. So, one of the things as you pick a kid today, you might have the heart to go like, I want to actually go meet that kid, and I already know that I'm on a different trip next year when our church is going. End of April is when we're going to go to the Philippines and start this relationship with these kids. But I will go the next year, and I will take my son with me, and then I'll take my daughter with me. I want them to meet these kids and develop a partnership with them relationally, and so and I love that we can send a bunch of, in fact, we had people in the first service who are like, we'll co-lead the trip, we'll go be a part of it. They have relationships there. So anyway, that's what we're after. And so so $39 a month, or I think there's a $45 option too to help kids that aren't sponsored. Is that right?
Right, it's just to keep kids in. We don't kick a kid out because they don't have a sponsor yet. They're in the program once we register them, and so it costs us a little extra money to keep them there until they get a sponsor.
Okay, so next steps, just to make sure that you guys all do this clearly. Can you just tell us how to do this right?
Here's how to do it. This is a profile. This is Emmanuel. He's 5. Has his birth date here, January 17th. It says he's from the Philippines. All the children today are from the Philippines. And then if you look on the inside, you're allowed to do this. Go out there and take down a profile and read a little bit about him. It says that he likes donuts, and his favorite thing are his shoes. So that's good. He's wearing flip-flops. But it also says that he's being raised by his aunt, and because his mother works very far away, so he's got some challenges in his life, and he wants to be a police officer or a soldier so he can protect people. So you can learn that kind of information about a child before you sponsor if you want to, or you can just see a face that you like or a name. My sponsored child is named Princess as well, also lives in the Philippines. So all we need you to do is this. This is the most important part for today, is just to fill out this white card and leave the white card with us. You can take the profile with you, with the photo, but leave the white card with us. If you take the whole thing and go home with it, we lose track of that child. Internally, we call that kidnapping, which is a felony.
So don't do that.
I believe. So if you grabbed one on the way in and it's like sitting under your chair right now, you didn't know you were a felon, but you are. You have to actually fill out this card and leave that with us. But please take the photo home with you, and you'll get more information in the mail about how to write to that child, how you can pray for them, little gifts that you can send. and begin that relationship.
Yeah, awesome. And as you do that, tear off the card and give it to our team out there. Anyone with a one-child badge, we're out there to serve you and make sure we collect the proper information. You can take your child with you, and you'll get some in the mail in a couple weeks, right?
Correct.
Cool. Can we give it up for James, you guys?
Thank you.
Yeah, love you, brother. All right, I want to invite you to stand this morning. We're going to close our service. We want to give you time out there to consider sponsoring a kid today. A couple things. Number one is if you need prayer for anything, to my right and to your left, we have John over here, and our team would love to pray with you or for you. If you're walking through things, don't walk through it alone. This is what I love about this idea of family is like you should have someone in your corner who knows what you're walking through so that we can pray with you and for you. And so we'd love to do that over here. You can also email your prayer request to prayer@district.church, and we'll be in touch with you on that as well. And then lastly, we're going to worship God with our morning tithes and offerings. If you're a guest with us, please feel no pressure to give. The service is our gift to you. We're just hoping that you had a great time with us this morning. I want to invite you to swing by the kid profiles as you go this morning. If you're in a hurry, don't grab one of these. There are cards out there with a QR code that you can take with you. If you want to do it from your house, you can do that as well. I think we have like 230 kids that we have available to sponsor today, and I think District.Church can do it. What do you guys think? You think we can do that? Yeah, me too. So I'm going to pray for us as we close the service, and we're going to go out with a shout. So let's pray together. Jesus, thank you so much for your love, for your grace, and for your kindness that you poured out on us. And God, if there's anything I'm absolutely convinced of is you have blessed us to be a blessing. You have given all the things you've given us, your grace, your forgiveness, our income, our resources, all of it is an overflow of your goodness for us. God, I pray that we would never hold tightly to it, but we'd overflow onto other people as well. And so as an opportunity, a tangible thing where we can make a difference in someone's life, would you lead us to the right relationship, lead us to the right kid, and as we take these next steps, God, I pray that it would be a blessing that would last like literally generations. That is our heart. And as we worship you now with our giving, God, this is not a business transaction between us and you. This is our heart. This is our worship. And so receive it as our worship. And you're doing great things in and through us, and we just continue to make ourselves available to you. In Jesus' name, everybody said, amen. God bless you guys. You're dismissed. Go with God. He's going with you.
When I'm in the roughest water, I won't go under, I won't drown. And when I'm in over my head, I know that you won't let me down. And when I'm broken, you're down to nothing, 'cause I know that you are always up to something.